Hi, I am Kevin Quigley, and welcome to Tarot Off the Cuff. I picked up my first tarot deck in 1982 when I was 12 years old. I spent the summer giving readings to my friends and kind of freaking them out, and then I misplaced it. Maybe 15 years later, I picked up another tarot deck, and I've been reading professionally pretty much since then. Tarot reading for me is about building up a conversation. A conversation not just between myself and my client, but between our higher selves, so that we might bring down some information that might help make us a little bit more conscious and maybe even our lives a little bit better.
Hello everybody, welcome to Tarot Off the Cuff. My name is Kevin Quigley. I am shuffling up Chris Ann's Light Seer's Tarot. Great little deck here. And I'm going to pull a card and then we'll see what that leads to talk about. All right, let me take a quick second, get this down on my desk. All right, so I've got card number 18, the moon. Not a typical moon, right? We do still have the two dogs up there howling, maybe a wolf and a dog, right? But then we've got the human figure that's sort of in the moonlight, but disappearing into the water, almost like the lobster has been replaced by this, sort of red-haired, flowy, sinking. I'm deciding that they're sinking, that they're going deeper down, but maybe not. We don't know. Okay, so what does that bring me to want to talk about? Disappearing, stepping out of the visual spotlight. Now, I do want to say that as a tarot reader, I actually include my own gestures or moments from my own biography whenever they come up in a reading. I'm like, oh yeah, so here's a quick story of me. If those things jump into my mind, I work them into the reading. I do tell them. And I actually am going to do a whole 10-minute talk on that once the card comes up, unless something else strikes my fancy. But I already know which card that's going to be. I have a feeling it's coming soon, right? But for this one is about how not to take the spotlight, how to actually become quieter. So, without thinking too much about that, there's a few things that help with this. The first one is asking more questions than you do make statements. So ask a lot of questions. So if a card shows up in a reading, so in particular, here's the moon here, you can ask your client sometimes, oh, what do you see here? What's going on? Right? And then sometimes I'll even slide the card across the table so they can take a look at it. Another one that I'll do sometimes, I'm just going to grab another card off the top of the deck. I've got one. Here we go. And sometimes, in this case, sometimes I know I'm going to do it. It's a card that I will look at. Okay, I know what it is, and I might say, all right, I'm going to show you this next card that I drew as an answer to the question that we decided to ask. And you're going to tell me the first thing you notice on the card. And boom. Right, so let's say we were doing this in the context of the reading where the moon came up. The thing that struck my fancy, and maybe it would be for this person or whatever, is that both of these figures are dealing with the surface of the water. The Queen of Cups seems to be rising up out of it into bright daylight, and this other red-haired individual, similar color hair, I think, is sinking down into the darkness, into the night. So interesting there, right? And then I might even say, so that let's say that gave me that as a response. I'd say, and well, how's that feel? What does that mean to you? And let them tell the story. I listen. If there's something I don't understand or something I want to make, let's remember that point, I'll repeat it, right? Or I'll ask a question. I'll find a moment to say, can I ask, what did you mean by that? Or, oh, that's so interesting. That reminds me of one of the other cards that's already on the table. We'll talk about that in a second. Don't let me forget, right? So I like to use questions as catalysts to better conversations, but not just that, questions just as ways to get me saying less so that I don't completely dominate the conversation, which lots of tarot readers do, and I can do it too. There are readings where we fall into that, and it's even entirely appropriate. So here are the cards on the table, and this is what I'm seeing. There are some times when I can feel, or you can tell, or maybe you've even asked a question or two and gotten, I don't know, type answers, right? That your client would like you to lead things and to do more of the talking and the asking, right? So, which is okay. But I do love sort of fading back so that they can tell their story, and oftentimes they can even answer their own questions. When this happens, when they answer their own questions and I just operate a little bit as a guide, right? The reading is so much more valid for them because it didn't come from me. It might not even really for them have come from the cards. Sometimes they'll say things like, oh, that's my mother, or oh boy, there's my boyfriend. That kind of a thing could be on there. Who knows? All right, more ways to disappear to let your client come forward. Something I do before every single reading for myself, even usually before the client sits down, is I consciously remind myself why I'm here. It's not for me, it's for them, right? So I do my best. It's part of my own sort of ethical code. I do my best to remind myself that I'm here to be of service. And even sometimes, occasionally, that leads me to ask, like in an additional intro, how can I be of service? How can I help? What can I do? Right? That simple question, it does two things. The first one is it lets the person I'm reading for know that, yes, I'm here. I'm here for you. That's the whole point. But it also reminds me that this is not my show. Now, I do run the show architecturally, like as a director or a choreographer, in terms of, all right, we're moving into our intro. We're getting to know each other. I'm stepping us into me talking about my process and then sliding into, this is how I ask them about their situation. And in my case, I say, don't tell me too much. When I start, I almost always say, just give me a single word or a sentence or a phrase that sort of gets me in the ballpark, but give me no detail. I don't want it yet. As we read, if you'd like to give me some, that's okay, you may. But you also have the complete option to keep all of that to yourself. You don't have to share it with me at all. And almost always the reading still works quite well. I'll keep checking in, I'll keep asking, that sort of a thing. Again, back to the questions, right? So let's see what else this moon might help me do to take myself out of the reading. Oh, here's another one. This is an important one also for the beginning, before I do a reading. And before I even remind myself that I'm here for the other person, I need to make sure for myself that I am calmed down. So if I've had a rough or exciting day in some way, I breathe out. So I take good breaths in and I breathe out. I do that at least 3 times with big breaths, and it's making me yawn right now, even just thinking about it, right? To let that stuff go. I don't want that clouding the reading. On the ancillary side, right? So a lot of this in this reading is this, but that. Okay, that's okay. Maybe the white wolf and the domesticated dog are talking to me right now on the moon card. On the ancillary side of that, if something still comes up and comes through, I'll usually put it into the reading in some way. I might even say something like, I've had a very exciting day. I got some really great news, and it's just bubbling around me. Oftentimes, when that happens, there's a reason, like it keeps me more awake or more alive, or maybe even the situation that's happening in my life is informing or going to inform or affect the way I talk to you. Clients generally are like, oh, that's interesting, right? And then if it comes up in the reading, or if there's a card that reminds me of it, I'll say, here's where this is for me. Maybe this means something to you. And then I'll ask, tell me, does it feel interesting to you? And quite often someone will say, oh my gosh, isn't that interesting? So that thing is happening with you, something about a new performance or something, right? That's like a common thing. And then in my case, I just got a book deal, right? Something like that. Your outro. Let's just jump to the outro. So I want to make sure that when I'm speaking my outro, I try to do every little step in 4, and I remind myself of the 4 suits of the tarot coming down from wands, cups, swords, pentacles. So for my outro, I'll move through each of those things, but in that case, I'm really only talking about the things that we discussed about them. I try not to bring up extraneous details. I try not to be distracting in any way, just like boom, 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 boom. Here are the things to remember. So the first part of the intro, wands, recognition, light. So I'm so glad that you came in for the reading today. As we're wrapping things up, let's do a quick summation. You came in, I got your name. I learned to pronounce it correctly because it was an interesting name, maybe, and whatever. And then you gave me the tiniest bit of information. We threw some cards down on the table and started looking at them. The cards, if I recall, were this one and this one seemed to really strike you, and we talked a lot about those two, so let's remember those. Then we'll move down to, there was a couple of moments where things got, maybe you got a little teary, right? Or that we got excited and happy or jokey. So now we're in the cups realm. We're in the feeling space, the heart space, right? So we'll talk about that, and that really does help people remember. How did you feel when we were doing the reading? Yes, there was that moment where I finally connected with, or we discovered that you're actually not just working with some pain in the situation that you're living through right now, but that this is kind of a residual pattern that exists in your life. For instance, let's come up with an example residual pattern just now so you can hear it of, let's say that you've got people that let you down a lot. Right? Since you were a little kid, you'd give them a certain level of trust or something, and then something would come up, there'd be a big problem, and then things would break or collapse, right? So we moved into that, right? So that's not necessarily pleasant, but the feeling realm is important. It really, really wakes up an individual's capacity to remember and to act, for that matter. Then we move into the actual fact of the reading, and this is where I might, even more than wands, want to talk about the specific cards. So we're talking about the process, we're talking about language. This is the suit of swords. Hopefully I'll be above that little blue bar that's down there. The suit of swords. So the suit of swords is, and then there was a moment where you had a question and we pulled a second card and I asked you about it, and then here it came, right? And then we had that little discussion. So let's remember that. And then finally we come down to discs, practical advice. So the things that I would like you to remember to do, the advice things that we came up with. I try to generally keep this to 3 points, A, B, and C. So tomorrow or tonight, you're going to go home tonight. I want to make sure that you do everything you can to make sure you get a good night's sleep, because the last week for you has been rough and sleep's been hard. So here are some ways to do that, right? So when you go home, don't turn on any big lights. Keep everything quite dim and quite dark. Don't go to TV. Don't go to your normal distractions. Don't even open a book. Just be calm and cool. And then when you go to bed, after an hour or so of dim light and quiet reflection, or just living quietly, maybe you've got a snack or something like that, let's hope that that'll help you get to sleep. Practical piece of advice. 1. And then there'll be a second one, and then a third one. All of these come out of the reading. Before that point, I usually ask if they have any more questions. But even then, at this point, if I've forgotten to ask, which happens, or if I can tell that they might still be unsettled or something, you got any questions on that? That one is to make sure that they remember each of those 4 steps that we just talked through, but in particular, the practical advice. And then I'll say, if you'd like, check in with me in a week or 2. I also suggest that you wait a week or 2 and then listen to this recording that you made of the reading again. It's on your phone. You're going to think about it at some moment. And lots of people at that time will pull that recording out. They'll take a listen to it, and then they'll discover that the things that they remembered and heard are the ones in the recording listen kind of just fly past them. And the things that they really, really sunk in to them, those things fly past, and then all this new stuff that you didn't remember from the reading might bubble up and come forward. And it's almost like having a second reiteration of going over this particular issue. And let's hope you're in a new space. Let's hope that you've made some progress, or that things have changed in a way, and that you can actually use the second listening as a way to calibrate, as a way to see where you are, how things are. Are you different? Are you in a place you prefer? Okay, so I see I'm at about 15 minutes, and we just talked about how to end a reading, and end a reading in a way that was sort of pulling you into the backstage a bit, so that your client takes the foreground, or so that the conversation that you had at least takes the foreground. So thanks so much for listening. If you've got some comments on that, how do you, as a reader, sort of take the backstage so that your client can step forward and become really the important one, the protagonist of the story that you're going to be talking about? have some thoughts on that, I'd love to hear them. Currently, my life is so busy, it sometimes takes me a couple of weeks to get back to contents, but I always get back to them. So if you got something to say, I want to hear it. Great. My name is Kevin Quigley. You've been listening to Tarot Off the Cuff. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye. Hi, thanks for watching. This is Kevin Quigley with Tarot Off the Cuff. If you can take a second, click the subscribe button down below. That'll let you know when a new video is posted and you might want to jump over and watch it. If you hit the thumbs up for the videos that you really like, that will help spread the word so new people will find Tarot Off the Cuff in their feed, and that helps the channel grow. That would be great. And if you got a question or a comment, positive or negative, whether you agree or disagree, or if you want to add information or your own take on a particular card or a particular topic, put a comment down below. We would love to hear from you. Thanks so much.